Welcome back everyone to another Day Zero Girl Power build. This time we have Momo Yaoyorozu 3, and this is a pretty interesting one that I'm starting to get a little more and more afraid of as I learn kind of more about what these characters are trying to do. So Momo is a 6 hand size 28 health character this time. She has 1A in Student as her character traits. Her symbols are Earth, Good, and Life, and today I have chosen a Life build for two very specific reasons: a set of attacks and a set of foundations, actually. So one pair of each. So let's get into it. She has a first form, so this has to be if you want to use this ability, it has to be the first thing you do after you draw up to your hand size. Before you play any cards from your hand, you can use this first form, which is commit one foundation. Choose one non-unique foundation in your discard pile. If there are no copies of that card in your stage, build it. So she wants to play a lot of one-ofs or low numbers of certain foundations. What's really cool about this ability is you are allowed to commit your characters for commit foundation costs. So when it says commit one foundation, you are allowed to commit your character. So if you go second as Momo Yaoyorozu, you get to review one foundation, draw your card, draw for your extra card for going second. Then as a first form, you may commit Momo to build that foundation from your discard pile because you have no foundations, so therefore it cannot have another copy of it in your stage already. So you can start your turn going second with one foundation, which is kind of the same as having your character up, but it allows you to draw an extra card in your turn, and you get to build out a little bit longer if need be, which is really solid. She also has an enhanced choose one rival foundation. This attack gets +1 or -1 speed for each copy of that foundation in their stage. So if they have 3 copies of a foundation face up, you can get +3 or -3 speed on every attack for free. Granted, your rival does have a bit of control over this, but we'll see how we can manipulate those odds in our favor a little bit later. Moving into our attacks, we have Canister Creation Strike. This is her ultra rare. It's the 4 low for 5. It's got tech and weapon. And it says, enhance, you can lose 2 health and remove a foundation. Build a foundation from your discard pile with 1 greater difficulty than the foundation's printed difficulty. So if you remove a 1 cost from your stage, you can build a 2 cost from your discard pile. If you remove a face down foundation, that counts as a 0 difficulty foundation, so you may build a 1 difficulty foundation from your discard pile by removing a face down foundation. And this can also be committed foundations. It doesn't have to be ready. So you can turn a face-down committed foundation into a face-up ready 1 difficulty foundation, which is really strong. Then you can spend a momentum for it to get +1 damage for each copy of for each face-up card with exactly 1 copy in your stage. This includes your character. This includes assets. So as long as you have, one of several foundations, this can become a beating later on in a turn. Speaking of beatings, we have her secret rare Net Launcher. This is one of the cards I wanted to build around, between this and Cannon Blast, and we'll talk about Cannon Blast in a second. But you can spend a momentum, build a foundation from your discard pile, then you can choose a foundation in your rival's discard pile and force them to build that foundation. So that's a good way that we can get more speed out of our character by selecting something they have 1 or 2 copies of and building a 3rd or 2nd or maybe even 4th if we're lucky copy from our rival's discard pile so we can get more speed. But the dangerous part of this card is you commit 3 face-up foundations with all different names to get 3 speed, 6 damage, and stun 2. So that makes this a 7 mid 11 with stun 2. It's effectively a 9 mid 11. That's nuts. That is insane. This is very, very strong and very well worth the secret rare. And let's skip ahead a little bit to Cannon Blast. This is another really strong kill card. You can commit 1 foundation to give it 1 speed, 2 damage, and then you can commit 2 foundations to give it 2 speed, 4 damage. So by committing 3 foundations, you get 3 speed and 6 damage. So just like Net Launcher, but you don't get the stun 2. So this can become a 7 high for 11. This can become a 7 mid for 11. And I'll skip ahead a little bit because the main reason I wanted to build around these two cards were Defiant Stance and Study Group Leader, which are both foundations that say once per turn, if you commit them for a cost, like Momo's First Form, or Net Launcher, or Cannon Blast, once per turn you get to ready them. Effectively, if you have 3 Defiant Stance, even if you want to play like one copy of a bunch of things, if you have 3 Defiant Stance, Net Launcher's free. You just ready them all up. And then you could play a Cannon Blast, and then commit them all again. Or if you have, 3 Study Group Leaders, you can commit these and re-ready them. And it's crazy. So Cannon Blast and Net Launcher are practically free with Defiant Stance. And that's why I wanted to build this deck off of the life symbol. You could build it off the good symbol, but I also have things like Instant Shining Flash and Hardened Claw Crusher, which we'll go into now, which made me want to lean towards the life symbol. Instant Shining Flash, after you play it, your rival spends a momentum. That's really solid. And you can flip a foundation, so something you might have 2 copies of, you can change that to 1 copy by flipping one. Your next card you play gets -1 difficulty. So extending our string a little bit more, turning our 5 diffs into 4 diffs. So you're playing it on a 5 instead of a 6. Pretty easy, and it's good momentum hate. Then Hardened Claw Crusher. This is a stun 1 attack, which is really nice. It's a 3 high 6, which is decent stats. But you can lose 2 health, choose a rival foundation and put it on top of their deck, then choose a non-unique foundation in their discard pile, and you force them to build it. Again, just like Net Launcher, it's a way to force our rival to put some face-up foundations into their stage that have more copies, so that we can get more out of our enhance to get more speed and more speed hate, especially if we can put in something like if our rival's got syndicate targets because they're trying to block low because they're really cheap, or number 10 Pro Hero is a really common card right now. So if we can build a bunch of number 10 Pro Heroes in our rival stage so that they're just blank foundations that don't do anything for them, we just get more free speed, and that is really, really solid. You can also remove 1 foundation to build the top card of your deck your discard pile, face down. So turning a committed resource into a ready resource, making this like a pseudo 4 diff maybe, unless we had to commit 2 foundations, but even then it's a pseudo 4 diff because you'd have to commit 1 foundation by checking a 3. I digress. We've talked about Cannon Blast already, and then Nejire Wave. This is fun because you can, as a response, spend a momentum. After you play this attack, your rival commits 3 foundations. So, instant stun 3 at response speed. Really solid. And then, as an enhance, it gets 2 damage for each attack your rival has blocked this turn. And if they've blocked Cannon Blast or Net Launcher, they've spent a lot of resources to do that. So, if they've spent a lot of resources, you can make Nejire Wave a fast, thanks to Yaoyorozu, and strong, thanks to itself, attack in its own right, while forcing them to commit even more foundations if you have the momentum to do so. So turning this into either a flow card or a finishing move, in some cases, can really be strong. So another reason to kind of build it off the life symbol, since we don't really have a momentum out on our attacks, that's kind of the only one. So we don't need momentum except for maybe for Airy or some of our other foundations. So this is a good way to use momentum offensively with our attacks to force our rival to just take a bunch of attacks to the face. Imagine opening with Nejire Wave, they commit 3, play Net Launcher, stun 2, make it 7 speed, give it 2 or 3 speed with Momo, stun 2, and then just they catch 11 to the face. It's nuts. Asset-wise, we have Airy, because Airy is an amazing defensive piece. She allows us to, as a static, ready 1 non-unique foundation in our stage at the end of our turn, and then we can remove her and spend a momentum to survive 1 hit. It would reduce our rival's attack to our current health -1, so their attack will auto-leave us at 1, which is really helpful when we're trying to survive. Speaking of surviving, we've got It Unbox, which is one of my favorite defensive pieces this format, just to return something back to its printed speed and damage, so that these really fast or really strong moves are just so much more easy to deal with, and I really enjoy it. Moving on to our foundations. There's not too many that I have as one-ofs, simply because I'm not comfortable with that kind of Highlander play style. I know a lot of people really like it. I don't mind running some cheeky one-ofs, but having only one of things, even if I can build them in, just feels weird to me. So most of my things are at two ofs, maybe a three of, and then I do have some ones that are just kind of fun. So we'll start with Refreshing Blend. Excuse me. Refreshing Blend. This is another one of our momentum outs. We can spend a momentum to gain 2 health, or we can spend a momentum to ready a foundation that has not been readied this combat phase. So if we've committed some things to have to pass our checks, we can then ready them, especially if it's a defiant stance or something we've had to commit. We can ready it, and then we can commit it for a cost to have it ready itself. Just a decent momentum out that kind of helps us manage our resources a bit more. I've got Researching the Answer. This is a unique foundation, so you can only have one of it in your stage. But after your ready step, if you have 6 or more face-up foundations that only have 1 copy, your hand size becomes +1 for the turn. So we become a 7 hand size instead of a 6 hand size, which just gives us more options, more resources, especially when we're building in these foundations, destroying foundations, flipping foundations. We can pretty much guarantee that we're going to have at least 6 with only 1 copy whenever we need that for Researching the Answer. Speaking of destroying our foundations, Steadfast Resolve. Response, destroy a foundation for +1 or -1 damage. This is good for keeping us out of deadlock, which when we're constantly building in these foundations, that can be a scary thing for us, and there's a lot of good deadlock in this set. But it could also, help us live a little bit longer. It can help us push a little bit more damage on our attacks. So all in all, it also helps us maintain the number of foundations with only 1 name in our stage. We got Team Stash. Most of these are charge or weapon attacks, and to just give an attack +2 speed, +2 damage for free, it says you're next. But if you're opening with an attack, and then your next ones say like a net launcher or a cannon blast or canister create strike, or even instant shining flash, making this a 6 high 6 that can then reduce the difficulty of our next attack isn't bad, because then you can make this a 6 high 6, flip the team stash you've committed. You're not really losing much, so that's not a bad idea, and it's pretty cool. So just stacking more stats onto our attacks to finish things off. Curious about quirks. Free draw. Moving on. Defiant Stance, I've already gone over. It readies itself when we commit it for cost, which, with our character and some of our attacks, is really, really powerful to just continuously push our the limits of what we're able to do on our turn. Faith Shield, one of the best defensive foundations in the game. It removes itself on block to flip, to make the attack deal no damage and flip it after it resolves. So Younger to Grow doesn't get to build. You're not hurt by throws, and it removes itself. It clears from progressive difficulty, so you don't have to worry about that progressive on defense. As an aside, it can destroy itself in your stage to give a stun or charge attack -2 damage. I don't know why they even printed that. I think that was just for flavor, because of her fight with Kaminari, but you're only ever going to use this as the response. Urameshi Perseverance, this lets us remove it and spend a momentum to fish any card we want from our discard pile to our hand. We can pick up the Cannon Blast, we can pick up the Net Launcher, or the Canister Creation Strike. Whatever we need, this card can get us, which is really solid, especially if we want to build it in with Momo as a first form, and then as our next form, remove it, discard a momentum, and you just pick up any attack you want, or whatever you need. Really cool, really neat as one of those cheeky one-ofs. Keiko's Aid, I've gone on and on about Keiko's Aid. If you're playing these symbols, you need Keiko's Aid, because it's just amazing defense. It's +2 difficulty to your rival's next attack after you block, and they can't get around it by playing a foundation like they could Breaker. Syndicate Target, solid defensive piece. It's a 6 check, it's a 0, so you could build it early. It's a 0 low block. really good. Number 10 Pro Hero, it's the same thing as Syndicate Target, but it's a high block, and it's a +1 instead of a 0, but you don't lose a health for blocking with it. Vast Strength is a good defensive foundation to build in with Momo. You remove it, and after an attack is played, it loses all non-keyword abilities. This was a great way to get around Mop Strike before it was banned, and now you can get around cards like Net Launcher. You can just blank that whole card. Same with Cannon Blast, or any of these other really powerful attacks that are not dependent on their keyword abilities, but more so their own enhances and responses. You can just blank those cards really easily. Incredible Display is really cool as a one-of, and you only really need one of with Momo. I know a lot of people want to play like 2 or 3, but if you can auto-build it in with Momo, it doesn't matter if you check it. You can commit it to add a foundation you block with back to your hand, and you can commit it and spend a momentum to cancel non-character responsibilities, so really solid defensive piece here. Heroic Assistance is fun. After one or more of your foundations is committed to a rival effect, you ready 2 foundations that haven't been readied this combat phase. So, really good on that, especially if your rival's like stun 1, cool. You stunned 1, I'll ready 2. And then as Deadlock, you can look at your rival's hand and change the zone of your attack, which, I mean, is pretty solid, especially if you're throwing one of these 11 damage moves and you don't want to get completely blocked. Another fun one of is Blood Evaluation. You can spend a momentum to ready it, which is playable while committed, and you can you can flip a rival momentum. So if your rival's playing Amajiki, you can spend a momentum to flip their Armor of the Ape, or their Armor of the Wolf, or whatever other fancy things they're doing. So really good use of your momentum here. I would in fact side more if you're going up against an Amajiki. And then once per turn, after it's readied due to an effect, you get to draw a card. So if it readies due to its own effect, or Refreshing Blend, I almost said Refreshing Bend, that'd be weird, you get to draw an extra card. So any way you can add cards to your resources, anytime you can draw more cards, you always want to do that. You can commit it with any of your character or attack abilities, spend a momentum, ready it up, draw a card, easy. Again, this deck's all about pushing the limit of what we're able to do in a turn, even with such heavy costed cards. New training method, after you build it, you can build a foundation from your hand committed. So this is a really cool way to review this on your first turn, commit Momo, build new training method, auto build something committed. So that way you don't have to spend as many resources building out. And then you can commit and flip it after you check a foundation, add it to your hand. If you need more foundations or something to block with, it's a good resource for that. And then Study Group Leader, this has got a Yaoyorozu response once per turn. It's just another copy of Defiant Stance. When you commit it to pay a cost, you ready it. And then response after the second or greater copy of an attack is played, it loses 1 keyword ability of your choice. Good for getting rid of stun, powerful, throw. If your rival's playing a throw package and they play the same throw twice, you can get rid of throw off of it. Really cool. Yeah, so that is Momo Yaoyorozu 3 off of Life. I think she's got a lot more potential than I originally gave her credit for. Like I said, I'm not really a fan of Highlander style play where you're only playing like 1 copy of a bunch of different cards. I know a lot of other players better than me thrive on stuff like that. But I really wanted to, with Defiant Stance and Study Group Leader and Blood Evaluation, really push the limits of what you're able to do with some of the most highest commit costs in the game. Commit 3 foundations for Net Launcher, commit 3 foundations for Cannon Blast, and to be able to just ready those up again so that it effectively costs you nothing. Especially if you open with a Blast or a Net Launcher and you check that 5, then you commit 3, ready those 3 back up, you threw a 7 mid or a 7 high 11 for free. That is insane to me. That is absolutely nuts. And that can really push your rival into a tight spot offensively. Especially if it's a Net Launcher, you get the stun 2 on top of that. Yeah, it's just really cool, and I think she's going to be a fun, interesting pivot to aggro deck. She can definitely wall up if you need to, because she can build all her defensive pieces from the discard pile. I'd be interested to see what else she could do off of maybe Earth or Good, something that can destroy a lot of its own foundations and then build them back in. But yeah, I also wanted to try to take advantage of her Enhance, which is why I've got the Hardened Claw Crushers, Net Launchers, things that can force my rival to build whatever I want them to from the discard pile. But yeah, that's my first take on Momo 3. What do you guys think? Do you think Life's the way to go, or do you have other ideas for her other two symbols? Do you think that this get all that you can out of your Foundations base is the right way to go, or are you just going to take her as a Highlander with 40 Foundations of 1 copy each and call it good with that? If you do, please post your list in the comments. I'd love to check it out and see what you guys are doing, because while that playstyle fascinates me, I'm not good at it, so I kind of want to see what other people are coming up with. But that'll be it for this day 0. Until next time, take care, guys.